Hello everybody and welcome back to OMB Reviews. I am the critic who is a cynic. Hope you're doing well, and today I'll be doing a box office preview for this upcoming weekend, which finally sees some competition at the box office. However, it's not looking very good for Disney Marvel, as Guardians is expected to have the lowest box office opening, at least domestically, of the entire Guardians franchise. Now, early reviews for this film have been mostly positive, so could it be that walk-ups for this weekend end up being higher than what is being predicted? Could it be that word of mouth ends up helping this film in the long run? Still too early to tell at this point in time. But based off of what we're seeing right now, it is not looking very good at all in Disney, and Marvel should probably be pretty concerned because, let's just say, if Guardians, for any reason, can't fully perform, if it can't make its money back, if it can't do what even, at least bare minimum, what the other Marvel films have been able to do this year, then it's going to be a lot of trouble for it. Also, we're going to talk about now the, third, fourth weekend of the Super Mario Brothers movie, finally getting knocked out of first place into second place, and having the largest drop-off of the entire franchise so far, projected to drop 49%. And as I said earlier on in previous box office breakdowns, this was inevitably going to happen. With no competition, there was no reason for the film to see any massive drop-offs from week to week, and so it was in the 20s and 30s. Now that there's actually competition, you're going to expect to see this film drop off domestically and even internationally as well in most marketplaces. But it'll be interesting still, nonetheless, to see how this film compares, or rather how Guardians is able to compare to Super Mario Brothers in these other marketplaces, and most especially, are we going to see the typical Marvel drop-off of 60+% in week 2, and could we potentially see down the line a Super Mario Brothers resurgence at the number 1 spot? Again, too early to tell at this point in time, but still questions that are worthy and interesting to think about nonetheless. So before we go any further, please make sure you smash that like button, slap that fire button, and obviously smash the rumble button as well. Also make sure that you are subscribed to the channel with the bell notification on. That way you know every time a video or live stream goes live on the channel. All right. Let's get into it. So Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 3, $115.2 million is what is being projected for this film from our friends over at Box Office Pro, with the range being somewhere between $105 and $125 million. Can't say that's too surprising of a number. Most Marvel films, it seems, are able to open up to at least $100 million domestically these days. However, things get a lot more interesting when you actually start to compare this movie to the other films of the franchise. Now, as you all know, when it comes to most box office media covers, they only will cover the actual reported numbers the year that a film came out, which is ignoring a lot of key factors like, hey, what was the average ticket price for that time? What also was, the rate of inflation for what today's dollars would actually be? So I've gone ahead and taken the liberty really, of doing that for them. You're welcome, media. And therefore, we're actually able to confirm that if this number indeed holds, or if it even comes in a little bit underneath this number, yeah, let's just say, danger, danger, danger. This could be the lowest opening domestic weekend of the entire Guardians franchise. And if that holds even internationally as well, could be the lowest opening for any Guardians film overall. And remember, that first Guardians film did very, very well, especially when you think about how no one knew about the film, no one had any idea about those characters for the most part, and yet positive word of mouth was able to get that film off and running. Could we see the same thing happen and save Guardians 3? Maybe, but I'll be able to see the film tonight, and I'll be able to let y'all know whether I think the film is at all worth going to see your money. If it is, as again, many of these reviewers have been saying, which is it's a return to form, it's a return to the old school Marvel days. Again, whether that is or not, hard to say. Trailers don't really make it seem like that, but we, of course, will break that down sometime either tonight or tomorrow morning when I get back from seeing it at the theater. But when you look at these numbers, so going back to the original Guardians of the Galaxy in 2014, remember that back then, right, a ticket today or $1 today would have been worth $1.27 back in 2014, meaning that the opening weekend, though at $94 million, which would be underneath the projected opening for Guardians 3, when you adjust, it's $119.7 million. So, a pretty impressive opening. You then go to Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 2, right, and you look at that film coming out in 2017, and that is when the film originally made $146.5 million in its opening weekend, so it was able to increase even the unadjusted, right? You could see that increase there. But that movie ticket would have been worth $1.23 in 2017. Our dollar today would have been worth $1 then. So therefore, the opening weekend was actually closer to $221 million. So interestingly enough, they were able to add about $100 million or so when you adjust these numbers appropriately, which is very, very impressive. That all being said, you're looking at a massive drop from the previous movie. Again, about a $100 million drop from the previous film, in fact, and not even able to get the same amount of money as out of the original movie. The fact that there is a scenario, right, that $105 million is at the bottom of the range, there is a scenario then when you could see Guardians 3 end up making as much or even less than the original unadjusted number. And if that happens, oh boy, things could be dangerous. But I've gone ahead also and taken into account what the ticket sales likely were. Then taken the average ticket price for back in 2014. Average ticket price was about $8.17. And obviously when it comes to average ticket price, you always got to take it with a grain of salt because this is the average for the entire year. Every quarter has a different overall price. And also it does not account for films that have a much higher gross from formats like IMAX and 3D, etc., where you could actually see less tickets sold because of the amount of money those tickets actually cost. But roughly estimating, the first film's opening weekend was able to make around was able to sell about 11.5 million tickets. They were able to increase that to over 20 million tickets in 2017, based off of the average ticket price, which today is around $10.45. And again, take that number with a grain of salt. Therefore, we look at that number and we think to ourselves, okay, this film likely to sell less tickets. So if the numbers and the adjustment for inflation still triggers you, hopefully the ticket sales will maybe be a little bit better metric for you instead, because it still shows basically the same thing, which is that this film is projected to sell less tickets opening weekend domestically versus the first Guardians film. $11.5 million versus $11 million flat for the upcoming Guardians 3. Now, I know a lot of people really like Chris Pratt, and very well that could be a situation where you could see him and the people that like him in general be able to drive out ticket sales to be a lot higher and a lot better than what is being right now projected. But yeah, let's just say things are not looking all that great for this movie, are not looking all that great for the future of this of the MCU, because if even this movie, Guardians, which is one of the most popular properties at this point in time, especially compared to everything else they have on the docket, then I don't know where else they could possibly think to make any money whatsoever. So we'll be following this, of course, this weekend, and it'll be interesting to see where these numbers actually fall in and what the Thursday numbers are, because that will give us an early indication of where this film will probably end up falling. And that's where I'll start to go to websites like Deadline, who are usually pretty good when it comes to those Thursday numbers coming in. And again, I don't think we're going to have a Mario situation when it comes to Guardians 3, but hey, you never know. 4,400 screens, though, very impressive, again, for all the other films that are currently out at that point in time, right? $100 million versus $21 million of the second place movie. But this is a movie, right? Super Mario Brothers film that's been out for quite a while, for about a month, and this film is just coming out. So, yeah. Might be impressive as an opening, and I'm sure you're going to get articles coming saying $100+ million opening, and then they're going to ignore the fact that, oh wait, that's actually less than even the opening film of the franchise. Yeah, not a good look. Super Mario Brothers, though, expected to make another $21 million, bringing its total domestic to $520 million. Very, very impressive numbers here. Shout out to Valiant Renegade. I know that he's been comparing this film and tracking this film compared to Top Gun Maverick from last year. And I think that that's probably a pretty good comparison. Those numbers have actually been pretty close to one another. It's been interesting to see the daily numbers versus the weekend numbers in the long term and the long range for those two movies. So it'll be interesting to see which one comes out on top in the very end. Regardless of that, though, the film is doing incredibly well, easily crossed $1 billion, and I still think has somewhere in its tank to be around 1.1, 1.3 billion. Still waiting on some updates from Japan and South Korea to see exactly what this film is capable of doing in those markets. It's looking like it's probably going to be a much softer overall box office run in South Korea, whereas Japan is still a little bit of up in the air, because even though the opening weekend was not all that impressive compared to many of the other animes that get released in that country, it is still very early on in its release, and sometimes films that have lower than even some of the biggest box office openings of all time in that country, sometimes they have a lower number, and they're able to get even more than some films that had a higher opening too, because of the way the market works over there, with much stronger holds from week to week and just long-term and long-range ticket sales being able to add to its overall total. So we'll break that down this Sunday when we are able to get some of those numbers. But again, still very impressive. The fact that it's been out for so long at this point and it's still only dropping 49%. I mean, again, the drops in the 30s were obviously more impressive, but hey, when competition comes around, this is inevitably going to happen, so it's really not going to hurt the film all that much as it continues to add to its overall box office profits. Evil Dead Rise is also hanging around from Warner Brothers, so they're still adding to their overall profits. So again, kudos to Warner Brothers for finally able to make a profitable movie. Let's see. Are You There, God? It's me, Margaret from Lionsgate. Projected to drop 41% in the second weekend, so not a terrible drop off there, but again, not really a whole lot of money being made by it either. A new film called Love Again, Love Again. I don't even know what that's from, but Sony Screen Gems expected to open to $3 million. Not all that great. Don't know the budget for that film yet, but Even with a low budget, it sounds like that probably might not be enough. John Wick Chapter 4 also hanging around as well. 40% drop off. Remember, this film did officially, and I talked about this on my stream on Tuesday, that indeed I did make a mistake. But that's also because the overall box office internationally had not updated until really just a few days ago. Even though Box Office Mojo was reporting it, remember, Box Office Mojo is not a very reliable site. I tried to avoid it at all possible because they've been notorious for updating their numbers and having numbers that are just unrealistic or having numbers that are just completely wrong that no one else is reporting. They happen to be right in that specific instance. So again, I was wrong in that instance to judge it in that way, but all the other sites and all the other major official box office tracking sites have updated it. So this film indeed has crossed $400 million. So hey, kudos to them. They were able to do that. And hey, I'm very happy to hear that because obviously I really enjoyed that movie. Air continues to hang around as well, continuing to be a massive financial loss for Amazon Studios. Dungeons & Dragons also, even though it's having still strong holds, not enough to make its money back. So still a pretty big flop there. Then you also have Big George Foreman, dropping 45% in its second weekend. Again, cost more than what it should have and not looking like it's going to make its money back. Again, I don't remember if there was an official budget release for this movie or not, but still not really big numbers nonetheless. And then the film Sisu, again, a film where I think the trailer is a lot better than the actual movie. 58% drop there, so not much of a surprise. I think that this film probably will end up breaking even by the end of this weekend, but we'll have to wait and see. But those are the numbers currently as they stand. So really the big question of the week is, what do you think Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 3 is actually going to do? Is it going to make $115 million? Is it going to make the low end of $105 million? Again, we'll go ahead and do this live because, you know, I like to do things live. I like to keep things realistic. Let's go ahead and pull up the Deadline article and see if they have a Deadline article. They normally do. And let's see right here. It says that it's expected to have a $250 million global opening. Now, just as a comparison, okay, again, think about this for a moment. You look back to last year, Doctor Strange, Multiverse of Madness. Doctor Strange Multiverse of Madness was able to have a global opening of $450 million. This film is looking at $200 million less than that. You go ahead and compare this film's domestic numbers. You can see this film is expected to come in less, well underneath that of the original movie. Globally, I have not been able to break those numbers down. But as it sees here, this, again, talking here about Deadline, is projecting the film to make $110 million domestically specifically. So they're actually projecting this film to come in even underneath, right, what we see in the overall projections coming out from Box Office Pro. And so let's see that $110 million, comparing that, as you can see, right, they're having 115 over at Box Office Pro. They have $5 million less at Deadline. Either way, this film projected to come in underneath. So if the film comes in even a little bit over the original Guardians, that would still be around like a $100 million drop from the last movie, which is not surprising because the last movie was not very good. The first movie was great, had a lot of high expectations, a lot of high hopes. I think that's why you saw, especially opening weekend, a much larger one for Guardians 2. Just didn't have as much staying power. I have not gone back to ever rewatch that movie. I've just never had an interest to. Guardians 1, I've gone back several times to. My wife and I love that movie. This movie, though, we just have no interest in going to see it ever again. Guardians 3, what will its legacy be? Let me know your thoughts in the comment section down below. If you like this video, make sure to smash that like button, that fire button, honestly, smash the rumble button. You're all amazing and beautiful people. Hope you have a wonderful rest of your day. A blessed feast of a blessed feast of Saints James and also that of Saint Philip as well. Oh man, my brain skipped for a moment there. And as always, God bless. And now for a huge special shout out to all of my patrons at the Keeper of the Bifrost level and above, starting off with my patrons over on Patreon: Father Luca Illich, Hymir Irie Hymason, Garrett Searles, Joe Horn, Jonathan Carney, Orange Chat Reviews, who you can check out over at his YouTube channel, Orange Chat Reviews, Laura, the Modern Major General Story, Rosetta Allen, who you can check out at her YouTube channel of Eagle Rider, and Miss Modern Muses, who you can check out at her YouTube channel by the same name as well. Also to my Subscribe Star peeps, Matt317, check him out over on Twitch, Fast Reaction, The R, Mr. Roy, J-Rod, The Beer Guru, and ZK-Man, you can check out over at xtheboundaries.co. And lastly, to my local supporters, Miss Minnesota Hockey Fan, How About a Hockey Player, J.H. Schwalbach, and Robert Barnes, the amazing lawyer. Thank you all very much for supporting me. at that Keep It the Bifrost level and above. And if you want your name shout out at the end of every video and live stream, make sure to check out the top link in the video description in order to get access to that. Also, there's a level where you get access to an exclusive podcast that I do with my friend John the Flip Flickinger, and also to a giveaways channel on my Discord where you get access to the giveaways of various 4K titles, including right now I've got a 4K Steelbook for Training Day. I got the 7th Seal from Criterion, Plane Trains Automobiles, Kubo and the Two Strings, They Live, Train to Busan, tons of others every single week, every single week. I'm going to stick by that. We're doing this live. I just recently gave away the 3 Steelbook collection for John Wick franchise, the amazing Stash Book collection version. So if you want to have access to various things like that, hey, check out that top link in the video description below. You're all amazing and beautiful people. Hope you have a wonderful rest of your day. And as always, God bless.